Welcome, and just briefly, please make sure to close every other application or Chrome or Firefox windows or whatever browser you use that you don't need, so you can have the whole bandwidth available for this webinar. Should you, against all odds, have technical issues, don't worry, the slides of the presentation will be made available to you. You see on the right-hand side the handout tab where you can from now on download a technical white paper and also the slides of this presentation. Okay, a warm welcome to everybody who has joined us today. My name is Tim. I am the executive of Cloud Expo Europe. If you're not familiar with us yet, I hope you will be soon. But today the stage belongs to Optimal System and my webinar presentator, Dr. Olaf Holst, who will have this webinar with us. Very warm welcome, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody, to today's webcast. My name is Olaf Holst. I'm a Chief Technology Evangelist from Optimal Systems in Berlin. We are a company that is producing enterprise content management software platforms for now almost 29 years. And since a short time, we are a member of the Kyocera group. That's a pretty interesting experience for all of us to have Japanese high-level management. So we're currently going through some disruptive changes in the company. But that's a point in my presentation too. We're talking about disruption later on. So what will we see today? We will get an impression on how important is technology for future changes and the future possibilities of your company. So let's start with one guy you might know from the TV, Dr. Emmett Brown. And he had a very good quote. I like it. He said, your future is whatever you make of it, so make it a good one. And that is very important for all the things we're doing. You are responsible for the future of your company or your business. So whenever you think about what you want to do, think about how it will be in the future for you. So how could be the impact of your technology, your changes, and all the other stuff for the future of your company. Currently, we are in an interesting situation. People are working from home and many changes are happening. So we just want to start with a small poll. Maybe you just click what is important for you, because I will tell you later on what was the outcome of this poll last time, almost at the same time last year in August at an exhibition from Gartner. They asked it was Forrester, sorry. They asked the attendants of the conference these questions: which investments are priority in your company? And that was an interesting outcome of this. And let's see what the outcome today of this poll is.
So the part on the right.
Okay, strength. I think we have finished already with the results, and that's interesting. One votes for accelerate digitization. That was the main point last year of the Forrester conference in London. Everybody was talking about digitization, and nobody was talking about innovations or reducing costs or increasing turnover. Same today, increasing turnover doesn't seem to be an issue for most of the companies today. That's pretty interesting, because when you listen to public communication, to newspapers, to TV and stuff like that, all people are talking about breakdown in turnover. It seems that it's still not an issue, so I don't know how the public communication about this is. I just can say for our company, for instance, we had the strongest July ever in history. So we don't experience any issues with turnover on the same level, but we still have to reduce costs and be prepared for the future of the company. So what can we do to be prepared for the future? Currently, we have the fear of a general recession, and that is depressing business and technology decisions. That is very very knowable for us too, that whenever we talk to existing customers or to potential customers, they say, yes, we need to invest, we need to strengthen our digitalization process, we need to be a digital company. There is still a lot of paper, but we have no time currently. So I don't know if the future for these companies will be good, because we just see that if you don't invest in digitalization, you really have a problem. For instance, when you work from the home office, like I do for almost the whole time beginning from March, if I wouldn't have access to all my documents and information and stuff like that, I couldn't work from home. So that's an experience we had with many of our customers that, let's say, they were walking slowly on their digitization process. They still have a lot of paper. And I talked to many of them and they said, yeah, now I'm sitting in my home office and I haven't access to my documents. That's pretty bad for me. So I could work if I could access the information, but I cannot. So I'm in the home office and I can't work. We just experience a strong demand for scanning technologies and stuff like that to really focus and push the digitalization process. If you don't do that, you don't change, and that is a fundamental new experience for many of us. Change is possible. For instance, if you look at business traveling, I was traveling a lot of time. I was flying to the US for a 2 hours meeting to have personal contact to customers, partners, and colleagues. I didn't do that since March, and nothing happened. So a video conference was possible for me. Business travel really breaks down from the revenue side for all the companies offering that, but that is not affecting the business. So we can change things if we really want to change things, and that is a good experience, and that's fundamental for us. So whenever somebody tells you, no, we can't do that because it never worked, yes, you can do it, because you see, if you want to do something, you can do it. So let's come to the main point of the presentation. Challenges cannot be met with the same methods or the same people or same partners, and of course not with the same technology and in the same frameworks conditions. So you have to change things, and many companies can change technology, for instance, and can integrate technology into their processes much deeper than they did today. So this is a different approach, because technology can change everything in your business. But for instance, you see some companies didn't do that. So you see a picture of a shipyard in Rostock. That was the Neptune shipyard, and they were building pretty sophisticated freight ships for a general freight with deck cranes and stuff like that. And they invented some interesting technologies like modularized build of ships, and they were really famous for their freight ships for a long time. And after the reunition of Germany, they tried to sell their ships, but they found out there was no demand for the ships. Container ships were the technology people used during the time they were building. This was a company from the German Democratic Republic, so they were member of the of another system, and so they really missed the time to change their products. Today, it looks like this. So the former Neptune shipyard is now a living area. It's very nice area in Rostock. Many people live there, but the former shipyard is completely away. But as Neptune had these interesting ideas of modularized construction of ships and building ships pretty easy and pretty fast, they were taken over because technology changes everything. And today they belong to the shipyard company that's building, for instance, the AIDA ships and stuff like that. Rostock is a deep water harbor, so they rebuild the shipyard on the other side of the waterfront, and now they are still building ships there under the label Neptune Shipyard. They're doing some outfitting of ships, repairs and stuff like that. So they took that technology, transformed that to a new level of current technology with more sophisticated welding technology, CAD and stuff like that. And so they are again building ships with a lot of employees because technology changed everything for them. And another thing that is very important, if you want to do something with technology, you have to be fast, because technology is changing fast. You have to be fearless, because if you change some fundamental stuff inside your organization, like for instance your backend, or you move all your applications to the cloud, you really need to be fearless, because you don't know if that works. I'm sure it will, because many did that before. And the last thing is you have to be flexible, because if you change something inside your processes and organization and you are not willing to adopt to the new technology, you will fail. So you have to be fast, you have to be fearless, and you have to be flexible if you want to get new momentum on your IT infrastructure. I have an example from a group of people that's almost known to all of us, the Vikings. And the Vikings were a threat to all of Europe thousands of years ago, because they were fast, they were fearless, and they were flexible. And that was the reason, because they had really good technology. They were able to sail over the sea and not following the coastline. And by doing that, they could sail directly to their target. On the other hand, they were fearless when they tried to do a raid or stuff like that. They had a discussion before, and then they decided all together, yes, we do that. So they were focused on what they were doing, and they were flexible, because if, for instance, their selected target was too strong for them, they just moved to another one, because they had the technology to find it. Why could they do that? They were the first one that could navigate a ship without seeing stars or sun. They built something like a today it's called a sun compass, that's built of these piece of wood and some piece of it's a quartz crystal that was able to break the light of the sun, so they could adjust their course to the correct target, even if they couldn't see the sun or the stars. That gives them a big advantage, because they were so fast moving over the sea directly to their target. And another thing that was very important, they had at that time in history the most strongest ships. They had sails, for sure, but if they couldn't sail, they could row. So there were rows on the ship, and if you see the outline of the ship, you see there's a high castle in the back. So if they were attacked by other ships, and other ships at that time were at a very low board and no castle, they could use their bows and arrows to shoot at the attackers. So they were almost invincible at that time in history. Because of their good technology, they traveled almost all over the known world. At that time, they even came to the North American continent. They discovered Greenland, Iceland. They were in the Mediterranean Sea. They were in England. And then after mostly all of Europe was threatened by them, and all the other countries decided they have to do something against the threat, they changed their way of living. They were flexible. They settled down in England, founded one of the first democratic rules and stuff like that. So basically all of the for today's UK democratic rules and stuff like that are based on the Vikings that settled down, and so they were not attacked by the other Europeans, and so they founded new cultural room. They were fast with this, they were fearless, and they were flexible. So they're still around with their mind setting in our daily life. A lot of other companies were also fast, fearless, and flexible. For instance, companies that really invented new technology, because technology changes everything. Take a look at Amazon, for instance. They were the biggest online supplier of books, and then they started to sell the Kindle. So the Kindle was disruptive to all bookstores, because you didn't need to buy books. You could buy these reading device, and you could buy books electronically. Everybody at that time they launched the first Kindle said they will ruin their own business. They are disrupting their own business, and they won't survive that by any means. But as you know, they did, and they extended their portfolio, and nowadays they are the largest online company in the world, as far as I know. They make a big revenue, and the owner of the company is currently the richest man in the world. And they did that more than once. They really started a lot of times with new technology. For instance, the echoes. It was, nobody knows at that time if really a digital assistant would be a breakthrough for many of the people, but it was a breakthrough. They really started to invent these technology. Before they started the Echo, they established their cloud services because that was absolutely necessary for their other ideas in technology. AWS Cloud is one of the most successful cloud platforms available in the world with a lot of interesting technology. And all this has nothing to do with their online book business they started with. So they were fast, they were fearless, they were flexible, and technology changed a lot for them. And what is very important, they had their failures during their process. For instance, I don't know if someone of you remembered the Fire phone, for instance. That was an interesting idea of a new telephone, but it was a complete failure in sales. Nobody wanted the telephone. It wasn't working all the time. Same with their Fire tablets. Yes, they still sell them, but it's an interesting piece of technology, but it's not let's say, a very important business for them. They still have this at the roundup for their portfolio. Another company not very much known in Europe, for instance, that did all the same is Alibaba. Alibaba is the largest cloud platform in the Asian market, and they have a huge amount of products and technology they sell. And they, for instance, started with something they call user experience is most important for them. Revenue is only the third point in the list of important points for Alibaba. The founder of the company said the first thing that has to be good is user experience. The second thing that has to be good is experience for my employees, and then revenue will be no issue for me. So that worked out for them. They're really almost everywhere in the Asian market, and now they try to entering other markets in the world with their cloud technology and their shops and online business. So another company that shows that technology can change everything and that you have to be fast, fearless, and flexible. There were other companies in the history that in some point in history stopped to be fast, fearless, and flexible. For instance, I don't know if you know this phone. This was the Nokia communicator, and I was I was always trying to get one of these phones paid by my boss, and he said it's much too expensive, so take your usual telephone or use your landline telephone. You don't need that communicator. And it was very expensive at that time, so I think it was around 2,000 Deutschmarks, so pretty heavy price for a telephone. But they had something we today call a killer application. And you see on the screen, the killer application of this device was a fax, because you could send and receive faxes with that. And at that time, fax was the mostly used way of business communication. So you could receive your orders everywhere when you had your communicator with you. You could send orders, you could communicate with your customers in a secure way. Fax is a secure way of communication. And at that time, really, most of us were not using email. So this was the killer application. Another thing that was very important for Nokia was the runtime of their devices. Almost all Nokia telephones, including the communicator, had a battery life of at least 2-3 days, some of them even more. And then Nokia invented, after they've been from the market capitalization, the #1 company in Europe, and for some short moments they were the #1 company in the world almost. And then they start building a smartphone, what we call today a smartphone. So they had a telephone with the touch screen, and the battery life of that telephone was around 9 hours, at least, maybe 8 hours, or if you use it very intensive, maybe 6 hours. And so the board decided they couldn't build this telephone because everybody expecting a telephone from Nokia having a battery life for days. So they stopped that, and some weeks later, Apple announced the first iPhone. And if you remember the time you could buy the first iPhone, everybody owning an iPhone was running around looking for a socket to charge the telephone, because the battery life was so bad of the first iPhone. You could operate it for 6 hours, 7 hours at most, so you needed to recharge it. And they were fast and fearless and flexible with their iPhone, and Nokia was not. So at that time, unfortunately, Nokia left the way they were so successful with. And as you know, today they're yeah, their brand is still there, but the company lost their relevance to the telephone market. They built brick telephones for the Asian market, for instance, but that is no high-tech technology anymore. On the other hand, one part of the company split up again. That's Nokian Tires. Nokian was the founding company of Nokia, and Nokian Tires invented a new way of producing tires, and they are nowadays one of the most profitable companies building tires for cars and construction machines and stuff like that. So they were fast and fearless and flexible, and they changed their technology. So they are a very successful company today. So when you're fast, when you're fearless, when you're flexible, and when you think about technology, you maybe will not die out. There is an interesting thing that's called what it's called. Sorry, I forgot my call here. It was invented by the Schumpeterian law of destruction. Schumpeter was a guy, an Austrian guy from the 30s, and he was a philosopher, and he was teaching economics at the school. And he said there will always be a company that will do what you do, but they will do it cheaper or faster or better. So if you're not aware of this, and he called that disruption, your company will be extincted by the others. They won't exist in the market anymore. And if you take a look at the first Fortune 500 list from the 50s, only 2 or 3 companies, I think, are still existing, like General Electric and some others. So all the others were bought, or they really stopped their business because of disruption. And today, the economic people say from our daily Fortune 500 list, 75% will be gone by 2027 because they are not aware of disruption and new competitors in the market. They have a good business and they think the business will last forever, but there will be somebody else who is doing an invention in their business, and they are not aware of that, so they are not aware of the disruption. They will be gone from the market later on. And so there is a model to avoid this, and the winner in this is the adaptive enterprise. That was an idea of the University of St. Gallen in the 90s already. They said there has to be a company that anticipates tomorrow's trends and customer requirements, and that use technology innovations to meet them and prepare themselves for permanent change. So whenever you're ready to change your business, whenever you're fearless enough and you're fast enough to see what happens to your business, and you have technology available to adjust, you can be adaptive. So will you adapt your business to the requirements of the market? There's a very good example of an adaptive enterprise, mostly known to all of us. That's Panasonic. Panasonic was the leading company, for instance, in building heads for video recorders in the 70s and 80s. And they were building cassette recorders and heads for cassette recorders. They were the market leader. But Panasonic has the unit since the beginning of the company that is looking in the future. They have a future research unit, they call it. And there are people working, and they think about how the world will look like in 100 years from now on, even in 200 years from now on. And then they start going back from that period in time. So they have an idea how technology could look at that time, and then they go back for another 100 years, for 50 years, for 20 years, and see what will happen then. And then they come to the current timeline. So they have trends for 5 years, for 3 years, for 1 year, for 6 months, and for the next month. So they have an outlook and an idea, and they have a plan. So at the time, it was almost visible that CDs and DVDs will be the DAS for video recorders. They already had the technology up and running to build DVD drives and CD drives, for instance, and they never lost business because they just changed their complete company and production lines to new technologies and new products. So they were always successful. And nowadays they are again looking in the future and thinking about, for instance, adaptive technology like 3D printing. Will that be the DAS for all the machine tool companies, for instance, because you can print everything? So they're really in the future, and they are fearless and flexible, and they are fast to adopt to these technology trends. So they are really a prototype of an adaptive enterprise, for instance. What is our challenge to do this? we must decide today for technology that can answer questions in a period of time in the future. We don't know what the question will be now. So if we decided for a technology that is, let's say, a dead-end technology, and that is cannot be extended anymore in, let's say, 2 years, we made the wrong decision. So we have to think about a technology that is available for a longer period of time and that is adjustable to our requirements, even if we don't know them yet. The other thing is we have to think about things that distinguish our business from the business of our competitors. I give you an example. If everybody is using, for instance, Salesforce as their CRM system, you don't have a competitive advantage when you use the same software or the same platform technology. So you have to think about if there is something that makes you faster. A friend of mine is working for Blackstone Investment, and they're doing these they call it hyper trading. Hyper trading is buying and selling of shares in milliseconds. And the software they were using was able to do these transactions in about 20 to 40 milliseconds. And that was too slow. So they were too slow to react to minor changes on the stock exchange. And they built a huge data center last year. My friend was the architect for that. And he said, yeah, they convinced Amazon to give them some of their basic technology. He didn't tell me how much they paid for that, and they installed a new farms of computers. They used artificial intelligence. They used processing on graphic cards, for instance. They installed a memory amount of, he told me, of 10 petabytes of memory to have all these database and information in memory and do fast transactions on that. And they reduced their transaction time from, let's say, an average of 40 milliseconds often to an average of 6 milliseconds. With these hyper trading capabilities they have today, they had a reinvestment of their new data center in about 6 months. And it was an amount of billions of dollars they invested in that data center. But they were fast and they were fearless and they were flexible to adopt these technology. And now they are still at the lead of all the investment companies. And the last thing is we have to think about our future business. We might know that. We are doing ECM technology for 29 years now, but will ECM technology be our future? We don't know yet. We think so because we have many ideas how we can adjust and enrich our software with new features and how we can use cloud technology, for instance, to give users new experience and stuff like that. But we really don't know if we will be an ECM company in 5 years from now. Maybe we do something completely different if we are fast and if we are fearless and if we are flexible. If we only take the challenges with the technology we know, but we will definitely fail. So Einstein really had a nice quote for that, and he said, you can solve problems on the same level it was created. You have to rise above it to the next level. So you step back, look at your problems, your ideas, your business from the outside, and you will be able to find new things you can do. You will be able to find new technology. You will be able to adjust your processes, and so you will not be disrupted. And we think there's a miracle cure for that, especially from the technology side. It's truly amazing. It works in minutes. It's completely guaranteed. This is a marketing slide, so I'm lying to you. But there is something that really can be the game changer for your technology. So sorry for saying technology is important and changes everything. It's still correct, but it's important how we use the technology. So technology is there. And first of all, we have to decide for a technology and establish it. If you think back a little bit, client-server architecture was the game changer in the 90s, and it's almost extincted. Then we're talking about 3-tier architecture. That's not quite yet extincted, but then we started talking about other things like service-oriented architecture, web services. We invented interesting APIs like REST API. We were talking about headless software. We were integrating software systems. We did mashups and stuff like that. So during that, there was new technology rising in the back. And just another quote from a movie, Deadpool said, I'm about to do what Limp Bizkit did to the music in the late 90s. And the technology that is doing the same that Limp Bizkit did to the music, that's what we call a microservice environment. The basic idea of a microservice is that you split up your large applications, your monolithic stuff into small chunks of software, small pieces called microservices. And these microservices can be deployed in cloud environments, that can be scaled up. They can be easily exchanged. So whenever you need a new function, just take the small part of the software, for instance, that is responsible for that, change that microservice for a new one, and you have a new software system, you have new technology. That's, for instance, a thing we use. We have built all our technology we're using currently on a microservice framework. We did not invent that on our own. We decided to use a technology framework that's called Eureka. Eureka is used by Netflix, for instance, at the back end. So we said when you're able to stream movies to hundreds of millions of users at the same time, it could be a good technology for managing documents, and that was a clean and good decision from our side. But at that point in time, we were really fearless because nobody did that. Nobody was using that. Currently, we're almost 1 year up front to our competitors technology-wise because we decided at an earlier point in time to use the correct technology that is future-proof. And we're absolutely sure with microservice technology, you can answer all the questions you might have in 5 years, even if you don't know them yet. So if you're thinking about adjusting your technology backend, your framework, installing new technology, give microservices a chance, take a look at that. Mostly all of the large suppliers are today working on microservice frameworks, and there's a lot of technology around. And the nice thing, it's native cloud technology, so you can really deploy this in public cloud systems like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. And on the other hand, if you want to have it still on premise or in your private data center, you can use technologies like Kubernetes and Docker containers to run that in your own infrastructure. So you can, let's say, emulate the cloud services in your own infrastructure. And whenever you want to shift to the cloud, partly or fully, you can do that with this kind of technology stack. So give microservices a chance. That's a clear recommendation from my side. As I said before, you should take a look at technology that is able to operate on-prem and in the cloud, because maybe you have some requirements from the compliance side or from for security reasons where you don't want to store all the information of your company in a cloud service. So you still need your data center. And if your new IT infrastructure will be able to do both, so that's what we call a hybrid environment, you can design what you can use in your own data center and what you can put in the public cloud for massive scaling, for instance, for marketing events, for conferences, for stuff like that. You clearly will use cloud services. For your sales force, you will really use cloud services because they may be spread all over the world. But for your engineering database, you maybe don't use cloud service. I don't know if you want to put your engineering database, for instance, in a Google Cloud or maybe in an Alibaba cloud, because yes, they say they have something like data security, but maybe you're not sure. So keep that at home in your on-premise environment and do the other things in the cloud. And so you have a hybrid approach. Look at the technology behind that. Many vendors is telling you they have hybrid technology and they're running in the cloud. But if you really scratch a little bit from the color away, you will see that is only hosting of virtual machines in a cloud service. That's not native cloud technology. That cannot scale up and down. That's not immortal like cloud software should be. That's not flexible like cloud software should be. So it's only a transformation of existing software to a cloud backend. So it's hosting of virtual machines in the cloud. Really look a little bit deeper to find if the technology you've chosen is really native cloud technology. Another thing is, if you look at new technology, you should think about technology using being able to be used headless. Headless means you don't have a user front end, but you have a really, really sophisticated API that's fully documented. With the headless IT system, you can integrate the functions and features of your backend into already existing systems. For instance, you might have an interesting or new intranet for your employees, and you want to integrate some services for, I don't know, quality assurance and stuff like that. So take a headless backend, integrate the services. If the headless backend additionally has something like a client toolkit where you can build clients with a good user experience, brilliant. But that's not a necessity for really high performance backends. That's just a nice add-on, and it will help you a lot. But with new technology and web technology, you can easily develop front ends for almost all technology that has a good described API anyway. If they are relying on a client technology to be used, this should be a web-only approach in the front end. So nobody wants Windows clients anymore with software distribution and stuff like that. Whenever you install new software, just look at really functional and sexy web clients. They need to be sexy, because if they are not, your users won't use the software or they will be unhappy. To give you an example, we decided for a cloud telephone system some years ago, and our IT staff decided which telephone systems it should be. They really decided on the feature list, and they tried it out, and they said it can do so much. It has a soft phone and a web phone, and it can follow you, and it works in your car, and it's nice, and it never worked. We were the first company with more than 60 users of the software. We were 500 at that time, and it didn't work for 500 people. It was not usable. It was not sexy. The client was horrible. You had hundreds of fields and buttons and stuff like that, because the decision was made by technology people. When you decide for new technology, that's another clear recommendation. Ask your users. They need to use it. Even if your IT doesn't like the look of the software because there are not enough buttons and tabs and stuff like that, you don't care about that. Just ask your users if they like it. It might be the correct software for you. Another thing is, software really must be new. That's a must, not a should or a have to. That's a must. It must be new. If you have a legacy system and you just build an app in front of your old host system, this is not new. That's not digitization. It won't help you in the future. You will be in a dead end sooner or later with that software, because your technology is not adaptive to a new requirements. And if you do all this, you don't care what the market wants from you. Then you might be not an adaptive company, because with all these technology, you have to listen to your customers and to the market and use the technology to adapt to the requirements from your existing customers and your markets. If you have established the technology, you have to transform your company to that. If you don't do that, you will probably build a candidate for what we call digital Darwinism. So if a technology is not and your environment and your rules and regulations do not change fast enough than other companies, you may be extincted, like, for instance, the dinosaurs. Okay, that was a catastrophe. They were not disrupted by technology. They were disrupted by a cosmic catastrophe. That could happen to us too, but we can consider that. So we're considering business requirements, and then really, when you have the technology, adopt the technology, be fast, be fearless, be flexible in the adoption, change your processes, change your way of working, change your thinking on IT and technology, change your look on the markets, and then you will be probably not a candidate for digital Darwinism, and you will survive. I have two examples of technology. That one on the left side did not survive. That was a sophisticated computer workplace in the 60s. But if you might see the chair in front of the terminal, that is still a design that is around in the market. These tape recorder here on the wall, you can say that's your USB stick today. So your personal storage, for instance, it was a little bit larger, but it still exists. It was going through some disruptions and changes, but it's still there. And the telephone, yes, the telephone is also still there. Today, you could buy workplaces like that, existing with 2 screens. They can read out RFID chips. They can download pictures from your mobile phone and stuff like that. I really tried to get one of these workplaces for my office. I couldn't get the investment through our board. And I personally pretty much like the inductive heating of the coffee mug. So whenever you put this coffee mug on the screen, there's a small RFID chip in it. It will be heated inductively, so you never have cold coffee when you have this workplace. There still are newer versions of these workplaces, which much more sophisticated technologies and ideas. So this is really disruptive for the workplace. Maybe that's an interesting home office place too. Yeah, and if you have established that, and if you have transformed your technology and all your systems, you have to be aware of disruption, and maybe you should disrupt yourself. So you should think about a technology that could be interesting for your customers and that could help you to survive in the futures. And I have an example for that. That's mixed reality, for instance. We were talking about augmented reality for a long time, but in the last years, we were talking a little bit more about mixed reality. This is a HoloLens, a device from Microsoft, and this is one of the first usable mixed reality devices. So you see on the left side in the picture, there is a young girl trying to repair these plumbing here under their water supply in the bathroom, and you see, I guess it's their father sitting on the sofa and giving her advice. She's wearing a HoloLens, so he could see what she sees, and he can put information inside her picture to tell her how to adjust this plumbing, what tools to use. He can communicate with her. I know what my daughter would do. She would call me and say, repair it, and I would do it for sure. But it's a good idea how technology could work. And if I have a look at our customers, many of them are thinking about new ways in service, for instance, like mixed reality services. Whenever you have high sophisticated equipment and you need specialized technicians for repair of it, you could use these mixed reality devices to give them to a mechanic where your equipment is operating and guide them from your office at home, so you don't need to travel to repair sophisticated equipment. It's just a small example of mixed reality that is not common, but it's growing more and more in the service area for field technology and field technicians. So whenever there is a chance that you disrupt yourself with new ideas, you may be more successful later on if you do so. So where do you stand today? That's the thing you have to select for yourself. I'm back at the beginning. Technology changes the dynamics of every business. But to adopt technology, you have to be faster than your market competitors. You have to be fearless because you have to change technology, and you have to be flexible because you have to change back-end systems and ways you're working. So technology can change everything, but it must fit and secure the future of the company. The path to the cloud is unstoppable from our point of view. So find out which solutions you can use and consume instead of creating them on premises. And you can get better than your competition if you use the same technology, as I said in the beginning. I would like to give you a small example of a mashup technology that is using cloud technology at the end of my webinar. I just will share my screen for you. I hope you will see a browser window now. I guess I will be locked out in the side. No. What you see is basically the front end of one of our software systems. So you don't have to bother about what you see here. I just would like to give you an example. We just created a small area where a user can store pictures. It's a photo album, you know, from other software things. So whenever you select the photo here, you see the photo, you see other photos, and you see on the left side there is a title of the photo, there is a location, and there are some keywords that describe these photos, for instance, like a skyscraper, a tower, and stuff like that. Nobody wants to type in all these keywords, so we use cloud technology in this case. I will drag and drop a picture from my desktop here to our software and just say I would like to add it to my photo album. So in the back end, the photo is uploaded to the system, and when the photo is uploaded, you see a preview of it, and the system asks you, is this a photo? I say, yes, it's a photo. And you see there was a small refresh of the screen. What did we do? We just triggered the Vision API from the Google Cloud service in the backend. So we transferred the photo for milliseconds in the Google Cloud. Google Cloud is analyzing this picture and comes back with an idea what it might be. And this is for sure the Seebrücke in Heringsdorf in the Baltic Sea. It's a building, it's a pier, it's a sea, it's water. So all these keywords that were entered from other users in the Google Cloud to similar pictures like this are taken over. So I don't have to type anything. All the description and the tagging and the meta information from the picture comes from a cloud service. And think a little bit further for your Office documents, you can do the same. You can put in documents, you will analyze them with cloud service, and the cloud service will give you information. That's a contract. They can even write abstracts of the contracts and stuff like that. So this is a mashup that works because the backend of the technology we're using here is a microservice framework. We can use it hybrid. We can integrate it in cloud environments. We can use it on premise and still use the cloud services available because we do this hybrid approach. And this is a good example on how you can integrate already existing software in your software environment today, because that's available for a longer time. But you have to be, as you know, you have to be fast, you have to be fearless, and you have to be flexible to do that. So I will come back to my slides. Oh, sorry, it stopped the presentation. No, we're on the same time. So think about new technology, implement that in your processes, and you will have a bright future. Even if you don't know what your future will be today, you will have a bright future. And if you do some other stuff that might help you additionally, like process automation, like interesting clean environments and user interfaces. You should use software that can be used without training and stuff like that. There are a lot more interesting ideas we have. You can find them all in the presentation that is shared with you in the handout section. You will be the Vikings of your business maybe in the future. So all of your competitors will fear you because you are fast, you're fearless, you're flexible, you react to all changes. You're the next prototype of an adaptive enterprise. Yeah, I'm through. Thank you for listening.